It happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I had just returned home from work, exhausted after spending the entire day dealing with deadlines. The house was unusually quiet. My wife, Emily, sat on the couch staring at her phone. She barely looked up when I walked in. Something about her expression felt distant. After dinner, she cleared her throat and finally spoke. "We need to talk." Those 4 words immediately made my stomach tighten. She took a deep breath before saying, "I'm leaving on Friday for a 4-day trip with Ryan." For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard her. Ryan wasn't just a coworker or an old friend. Ryan was her ex-boyfriend, the same man she had once promised I would never have to worry about. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. Instead, she calmly continued, "It's not what you think. He's organizing a networking retreat for several professionals in our industry. I'll make valuable connections." Her explanation sounded rehearsed. Every sentence felt carefully prepared. I asked the obvious question, "Why him?" She shrugged. "Because he invited me." No hesitation, no guilt, just complete confidence that I should accept it. Then she added the sentence that hurt the most. "I need you to trust me." Funny how people often ask for trust after making a decision without you. I looked around the room we'd spent years building together. The family photos, the wedding picture above the fireplace, the life we'd created. Suddenly, it all felt like decorations in someone else's house. Emily watched me closely. She expected anger, she expected shouting, maybe even begging. Instead, I stayed completely calm. I thought about everything that had led us here. The late-night texts she insisted were work, the sudden password changes, the endless comparisons between me and more ambitious people. None of it had seemed big enough on its own. Now every piece fit together. She leaned forward. "Say something." I smiled politely. "Safe travels." 2 words, that's all. She frowned. "What?" "Safe travels." Her confident expression disappeared. She blinked several times. That's your response?" I simply nodded. For the first time since the conversation began, she looked nervous. She kept talking, explaining, justifying, repeating that nothing inappropriate would happen. But I had already stopped listening, because the trip itself wasn't the real problem. Respect was. A marriage doesn't fall apart because of one vacation. It falls apart when one person believes they can make choices that completely ignore their partner's feelings. The next morning, I called an attorney before I even went to work. By lunchtime, I had scheduled an appointment. By Thursday afternoon, the paperwork had begun. Friday arrived. Emily rolled her suitcase toward the front door. She looked surprised that I hadn't argued once all week. As she reached for the handle, she hesitated. "Aren't you even going to ask me not to go?" I looked up from my coffee. "No." She waited. Nothing else came. She left. The house became silent. Oddly enough, it was the most peaceful silence I'd experienced in months. 3 days later, she started calling. Again and again. I ignored every call. Then the messages arrived. "I miss you. We need to talk. I think you're overreacting." Finally, I replied with one text. "The papers are ready." Less than a minute later, my phone rang. I didn't answer. She came home the following evening instead. The moment she walked inside, she saw the envelope resting on the dining table. Divorce papers. Her face turned white. "You can't be serious." "I am." "It was only a trip." I shook my head. "No. It was a choice." She tried to explain that nothing had happened. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe she wasn't. At that point, it didn't matter anymore. She had already shown me where I stood on her list of priorities. Marriage isn't only about fidelity. It's about consideration. It's about choosing your partner before everyone else. She had made her choice. Now I was making mine. Tears filled her eyes as she realized there would be no dramatic argument to fix. No emotional scene. No second chance earned through promises. Just consequences. I signed the final page. She looked at me one last time. "So that's really it?" I quietly nodded. "Safe travels." This time the words carried a completely different meaning. She lowered her head, picked up the envelope, and walked away. The front door closed softly behind her, and just like that, 6 years of marriage ended. not with shouting or revenge, but with the quiet realization that respect, once lost, is sometimes impossible to rebuild.